Hello and welcome to Perfectly Paranormal, episode 83. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. And today we are talking haunted objects and psychometry. And people often ask me how I feel or sense energy and entities in objects, which is technically known as psychometry. And I have 4 experiences to share with you today, highlighting entity attachment to items, and some you might not even suspect, such as a lapis lazuli necklace, a rather innocent-looking antique chair, and the couch at the hairdresser's. Now that, I have to say, that was an interesting experience. And I'm also going to share with you today some ways that you can assess items before buying them, using your own psychic abilities. And yes, you do have them. So let's lift the veil on psychometry and haunted objects. Psychometry is the extrasensory ability to sense energetic impressions, sensations, messages, and all sorts of information from objects, photos, people, pets, and places. And later on, I'm going to be sharing my top 5 tips for awareness, activation, and observation that you can use to practice sensing energy in objects. So stay tuned for that. But firstly, I would like to give you a quick rundown on how psychometry works, sort of in general and for me personally, because psychometry is going to be slightly different for everyone. So what I'm sharing today is a basic overall view, what it is and how it works. Now, holding an object, that is the classic way for people to do psychometry. You can do this with living people's objects, but also with deceased people's items. And what you're doing is you're holding the object. I usually put it in my left hand, if it's a piece of jewellery or something small enough to fit in the hand easily, and I put my right hand on top. And what I'm doing is I'm tuning into the energy within the object. You're sensing information about the person who owned it. You can pick up on emotions of the person. You might see images of the people and some of their experiences. You might feel their habits. You might get dates, events. Some people feel bodily signs that person had when they were wearing say it was jewellery or a piece of clothing or a scarf, something like that. You might feel bodily signs such as pains in the body. Now, the more personal the items, such as jewellery or keys or a favourite piece of clothing, the more connection that you're going to get to the person's energy. Now, photos of people are a great way to connect to their energy. Now, this again can be for living people or it can be for deceased people, because photos, they carry the energy of the person and they can impart messages, sometimes from loved ones who are wanting to connect to family members, or for people like me who do energy work. I work worldwide and I don't have to have the person in the room with me to do an energy clearing. I look at a photo of the person's face and I tune into the person's right eye. Don't ask me why it's their right eye, it's just the way that this psychometry works for me. Now, when you look at photos, you can sometimes pick up on the person's personality, their personal traits, and their habits. And it's very often similar to the information that you're going to get when you're doing a psychometry object reading. And some people just prefer photos over objects, or some people it's the other way around. I used to take a friend with me when I started doing house clearings in Tasmania, in local Hobart area. She loved reading people's photos. She would look at people's photos on their mantelpieces and just the information would just pour out of her. Whereas I'd look at the photo and get nothing. because it didn't work for me that way. See, everyone's different and you have to learn the ways that work for you. Being a house clearer, photos of places, this type of sensitivity is part of my energy clearing work. Homes, buildings, the addresses, floor plans, even sometimes large trees that are on properties, they talk to me. I know that sounds odd, but buildings are a living entity, just like the trees and the gardens around the buildings, and they absorb energy from people. It's as simple as that. So when you're tuned in, or when it's your special skill, we'll call it, you can just tune into buildings. I find I tune into furniture really easily, and I tune into the actual structure of the building. And as I'm doing a house clearing, I say to the building, please show me the energy that you would like cleared. And quite often there's trauma imprints that need to be cleared, such as violence that's happened in the home, or there's been a death in the home, or there's been someone with a serious illness. I'll see it, and sometimes I might even feel the signs and symptoms of that particular illness. That is just the building showing me what it wants cleared. Now, some people say, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. You'll take on those symptoms. You'll develop that disease. It doesn't work that way. What I find is that I will feel the symptoms for maybe 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. And as I do the clearing in that particular area of the building, the energy just dissipates. That's part of me knowing that the work's been done. It's really fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating work. Also, too, you can pick up on the energy of pets. Now, there are people around the world who specialise in reading animals' energy. I talked about this back in episode 24. And there's another episode, I can't remember the number, about Axel the cat. And in that episode, Leonora Furco, she is an animal medium. She talks to your pets. They impart information that she couldn't possibly know. So where does she get that from? She's looking at a photo of the pet. She's tuning in to the pet's energy, and they're simply sharing information with her from the other side. Sometimes I get people sending me photos of their pets with problems, and sometimes it can be connected to homes as well, pets that just won't go into the home. And I tune into the pet through their photo. I don't necessarily do readings. I'm not like Leonora. I pick up more on what their emotional imprints are, what their trauma imprints are, whether they've got mental or emotional difficulties going on. That seems to be my skill with working with pets. Furniture, it's the same as houses and pets and places really. Furniture absorbs energy. And when I tune into a home, sometimes people will send me pictures of particular furniture, or if I go into a place in person, I've been into people's homes where I've said to them, may I please do a walk around, which is basically I go into rooms and I feel the energy with my body. I don't touch things, I don't touch other people's things that are in their homes. It's more just my body being used as a dowsing tool. Occasionally there are items that do want to impart information and I find myself touching them. And I always say to the client, do you mind? I just need to touch this wardrobe or touch this chair or this table. As soon as I put my hands, as soon as I put my hands on the furniture, I am feeling the pain, the emotions, the trauma that the furniture has absorbed from people's goings on. What people have done in that room, maybe on that furniture, up against that furniture, maybe the furniture's been thrown around in a particular way. It's really, really fascinating. Also too, when you buy furniture, this is really, really important. Furniture, like I said, absorbs our energy, but not just in our home. It's the people who say it's a wooden wardrobe we're talking about, just for an example. It's the people who cut down the wood. It's the people who process the wood. It's the people who build the wardrobe, paint the wardrobe, varnish the wardrobe, decorate the wardrobe, then package it and then deliver it. Everyone who touches that item imparts energy onto that item. Usually it's the people who handle it the most. So I don't want people to go into panic overload or go into paranoia about every time they buy a piece of furniture or an item from now on. Soon, after I share the stories, I'm going to share some ideas that you can use when you're about to purchase anything really. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about how you can use your body and use your mind with some of these psychometry skills to assess items when you're buying them. So before we get to that, let's look into some rather fascinating encounters. Now, I've got 4 psychometry experiences, all of mine, 2 in person and 2 through photos. So the first, this is a memorable experience. This was back in the early days. I reckon it's probably 15, 20 years ago now when this happened. This was my first in-person experience, which was a rather unassuming piece of furniture in a place of business. And I just had to sit on it, didn't I? The universe puts me in places sometimes. I used to call myself the paranormal Pied Piper because I would be told to go to places, like you need to go to the shop now. And I'm like, no, I don't need to go to the shop now. You need to get in the car and go to the shop. Right now, off you go. And if I don't do it, they just badger on. And the they is sort of my spirit guides or guardian angels, whatever you want to call it. They're telling me I need to go to the shop because I need to pick up something and bring it home and deal with it. Now, we're talking about paranormal entities here, so that some other poor person doesn't end up taking them home with them. So I'm thinking that this is probably what happened in this situation. I've called this rather strange experience the red couch with a secret. Visiting the barber with my son one day after school, we stood waiting for his turn for a trim. And when he was called up, I thought, I might just sit down and just shut my eyes for a few moments, have a bit of a rest while he's having a haircut. And the only place to sit in the barber shop was on this rather large red couch that was resting sort of in the corner and up against a far wall. And luckily it was now vacant. We were the only people in the shop. And as I looked at the couch, I kind of felt sort of a slight quiver in my stomach, and I started to feel a bit weird. But I didn't really take any notice of it like I should have. I just ignored the warning sensations. And I quickly sat down as someone else had entered the shop, and I thought, right, I'm going to get my prime spot on this couch and I'm going to shut my eyes and have a rest. Now, sitting there with my eyes shut, I started to feel sick, like really, really sick in the stomach. And I also started to feel very angry. I was so angry that I just wanted to get up and punch the wall. Now, when I opened my eyes, I found myself sitting really, really sort of, how can I put it? My body was tense and I had my fists sort of clenched really, really tightly. And I shook my hands out and I'm like, what is going on? Now, the boy waiting for his turn to have a haircut, like he looked at me really oddly as I was he was looking at me like I was some sort of crazy person. And I felt the anger coming again. Like I instinctively just stood up. I straightened my clothes and I kind of quietly moved to the counter where I sort of stood there straightening up all the business cards, and I just sort of leaned on the counter and I just looked at the couch. And the couch just sat there ever so innocently, like stationed in that corner. And I thought to myself, that couch has got something attached to it, and something that is not very nice. Now, I couldn't energetically clear that couch because it wasn't my property. And the barber, if I had mentioned it, he probably would have laughed me out of the shop. The something in that couch would have been either a dark or a demonic level presence, or a few of them. Because you've got to think, how many people come and go in that shop every day? And who knows, hundreds of people may have sat on that couch. And one of them, or 2 of them, have left behind a little present for somebody. Now, our second story is jewellery based. This crystal necklace was more than just a pretty piece. It had history. And history that I didn't know about before purchasing it. And I've called this slightly disturbing tale Grandma's Revenge. Now, I love the colour blue. The deeper the blue, the better. And one night when I was surfing eBay, I came across a very deep blue lapis lazuli necklace. And I don't shop very often. I don't buy much at all. And impulse buying is a rarity. But I was so excited that I bought the necklace and I eagerly awaited its arrival. And as soon as the postman arrived and handed me the parcel, I felt a bit different. There'd been a shift in my energy. I didn't quite feel myself in my mind or my body. I didn't take any notice of it because that sort of sensation happens to me quite a lot. Now, it could have been the postman, it could have been the packaging. It didn't have to necessarily be the necklace. The necklace was very simple, but it was absolutely stunning. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I held it up to the light to see these gold flecks that were kind of shimmering through the blue, through that sort of cobalt blue lapis-coloured stone. And I just fell in love with it. Now, as always, that's so funny, I struggled to open the clasp. My hands don't work very well when it comes to jewellery. And after a lot of fumbling about and swearing under my breath, it was in pride of place around my neck. I wore this necklace for the next 2 days. And then I started to feel those very strange symptoms that I felt when the postman handed me the necklace. Started to feel those symptoms again, but they were getting worse, they were really, really heavy. I can describe them to you as extreme brain fog. I had kind of slurred speech and I was starting to sort of shuffle around when I walked. I could hardly lift my legs and I felt really, really exhausted all the time. And on the third night, I have to say, I forgot to take the necklace off when I went to bed. And had the worst night's sleep ever. I had really odd dreams, I had delusional thinking, I was sweating, I had rapid breathing, and I felt really lost in the mind. I felt really bewildered when I woke up in the morning. It was just the oddest sensations, and I knew they weren't me because none of those signs and symptoms are something that I feel on a regular basis. So when I was on the computer, the feedback reminder came up and I thought, right, I'm going to contact the seller and just ask a couple of questions. So I very politely inquired about the necklace and he said that it was part of his grandmother's estate and that she'd passed of dementia after many, many years and that the family was selling her things to pay her bills. Now, as soon as I read the word dementia, I went, I know. I knew exactly what I was feeling. I knew it wasn't me. I just knew it. This was his grandmother's energy that was still imprinted onto the necklace. And being as sensitive as I am, I was feeling what she would have been feeling when she was wearing it. That is a type of psychometry. After reading that, I took off the necklace and I very gently placed it on my bedside table. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this beautiful necklace that I really don't want to wear anymore, but I'm not going to sell it and pass it on to somebody else with all these problems. Now, this experience was in the very early days, in my late 20s, when I was kind of new to energy clearing objects. I didn't have the skills that I do now. So I did some research on clearing negative energy from objects. And when I thought I had some processes that I would use on this necklace to help improve the energy of it, I went back to my bedroom and I went to the bedside table and the lapis stone had disappeared. It was the strangest thing. It had vanished out of the silver casing. Now, when I wore it for those 3 days, it wasn't loose. It was very well made and the stone was very well set into the silver. So I thought, this is odd. This is really, really odd. Now, I looked on the table, down the side of the table, thinking that it may have, fallen out and lay kind of wedged between the furniture. But nope, it was nowhere to be seen. Now, I just laughed and I said to myself, well, she must have been really annoyed that they sold her things. And she came back to get her lapis stone. Oh, my goodness. I wish she had taken the whole necklace. But she really didn't want anyone else to have it. I can kind of understand that. It might have been something that was very, very precious. Maybe she wanted one of the family to keep it. People don't always value the things that their deceased loved ones valued. And sometimes that is what causes the problems. Now, this experience taught me a valuable lesson about listening to your body's intuition, that psychometry, that sensing energy in objects before handling and wearing other people's items. Now, this can be clothing, this can be jewellery, and I always say, if it doesn't feel right, do some detective work. Now, I've got another short story for you. I used to sell pendulums. And the postman delivered a parcel to me one day. And as soon as he handed me the parcel, yet again I felt sick. Now this is recent. This is probably in the last sort of 12 months, 2 years. And I'm much older and much wiser now. So I thought, aha, it could be the postman's energy, or it could be the people who handled or wrapped the items. It could be the person who carved the pendulums. Sometimes it can be the stones that aren't happy. So I very carefully unpacked them all and I laid out, there was 7 amethyst pendulum points. There was no chains, just the points. And there was 4 rose quartz points. Put them on my kitchen table and got out my pendulum. Ran my pendulum over the top of each pendulum that was laying on the table and I asked, are there any entities attached to this pendulum? And I went along each one until I found the ones that had the entities attached to them. Now, there were 4 out of the 11 that had entities attached. So what I did is I put the clean ones aside and then I started asking some questions and I went through my emotion chart. I identified which emotions were attached to each of the pendulums. So I cleared the emotions, cleared the entities, and then the pendulums are clean energetically. Do check the chains. When I add the chains to the pendulum and I sell them, I know that I'm selling an energetically clean product. Now let's look at a couple of quick psychometry examples of mine from viewing photos. This is a fascinating experience. As I talked about earlier, furniture holds history. And this beautiful antique chair sure had a story to tell. And I've called this experience the window chair. Now, my friend Claire, she sent me through a photo of a chair that she'd recently purchased. It was old and it was in beautiful condition. Claire and I have done a lot of work together. She knows that sometimes energy can be attached to items. The older the item, the more people that have owned it, the more places it's been. It can possibly have emotional imprints or entities or both attached to it. So looking at this photo, I tuned into the chair. And as usual, the dark entities presented themselves first. Now, how I know that is that when I look at items, objects, places, photos, people, pets, addresses, my main sensitivity is that I feel the paranormal entities that are present. Not necessarily spirits, the darker entities. Don't know why, it just seems to be my special skill. It's actually very handy sometimes. Now, there were 2 energy beings attached to the residual energy imprints that were in this chair. And as I looked deeper, the word dementia popped into my mind. Now, I don't know anyone with dementia. I don't have any family members with dementia. I don't have any friends. I don't work with anyone that has that particular condition. So I knew when it just randomly popped into my head and I'm looking at the photo of that chair, it's connected to the chair. And as I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the chair, I started moving my hands in a really odd way. Like I had my hands at my side, but I'm moving them forward and down and back and forward and down and back. I'm thinking to myself, how odd. And as I'm sitting there, sort of my hands are moving, in my mind's eye, I saw a lady. Now this was an older lady. She was in her kind of mid-80s. She used to sit in this chair. And as she was looking out the window, enjoying the sunshine and looking at the garden, she would be rubbing her hands back and forth on the arms of the chair, and she'd sit there for hours on end doing this. So there you go. I knew when my body started doing this strange thing, I'm thinking, that's not me. That's got to be connected to this chair. So when I asked if there were any spirits attached to this chair, sure enough, the name Mavis popped into my mind. Now, I always say to people, I don't get names. I'm not strong in what I call mediumship, but I'm sort of learning to trust it now, because the more I say I'm not strong in mediumship, the more the universe goes, right, bam, we're going to start giving you some. So I listened to the names, and the name Mavis came out of nowhere, and I don't know a Mavis, never have known a Mavis. So as I continued looking at the photo of the chair, this sweet lady sitting there quite happily in her favourite chair, and she had the sweetest smile. She was just so lovely. She was totally oblivious to the fact that she'd passed away. She had no idea. And everywhere that the chair went, she went with it. And in my mind, she showed me roses. And she showed me how she'd spent many, many hours looking out the curtainless window at her garden, where she had pink and white roses. They were in full bloom. They were just beautiful. Now, I had a bit of a conversation with Mavis, just like I'm talking to you now. And Mavis was really keen to be free of the earth reality. Once she realised that she'd passed away, oh yes, I am ready to go now. I want to go to the other side. For Mavis to go, I asked her if she had any emotions that she wished to release. Because sometimes people are kept here not only by the grief of their families, or they've got messages to pass on to loved ones, or they're simply attached to their furniture. Sometimes it's the emotional energy that keeps people in the earth reality. So both the structure of the chair and Mavis, they both needed to release distress and helplessness and sadness and the dementia energy that had been kind of housed in the chair for many, many decades. Once this emotional baggage was cleared, Mavis just looked up. She looked past me. It's like she was looking behind me. And she very excitedly took the outstretched hand of Archangel Azrael, who comes to help spirits in their transitioning to the other side. And away she went. Like, she was so happy to go. It was all over in a flash. Like, I'm telling you, and it's taken me forever to tell you the story. But it just happened in like split seconds. She was gone, and it was just so beautiful. Once the chair was clear of Mavis's energy and the emotional imprints and the dementia, the two paranormal beings were like, we're just going to go now. See ya. Off they went. Remove the food source, away they go. And for my friend Claire, the chair was now energetically clean for its new home and the family that were going to enjoy using it. Now, this fascinating experience showed me that you never know what or who you are going to find on furniture. Now, before we head into my 5 top tips for learning psychometry, I've got one last story for you, and isn't it an ever so creepy experience? Oh my goodness. It's about a 100-year-old doll. So you all know where I'm going with this. And I've called this experience Dolly in My Bed. A concerned client contacted me to check the energy of an antique doll that had been given to her for her soon-to-be-born first child. Now, we're going to call this lady Lisa. Lisa said that the doll felt creepy. She really didn't like it. But she couldn't say no to her 80-year-old neighbour, who insisted that she have the doll. Now, the neighbour said that the doll had been passed down through her family, and she just had no one to give it to now. She wanted it to go to a good home. And she had hand-knitted a really beautiful pink bonnet and a dress, finished off with a pink ribbon. But the beautiful clothing didn't mask the negativity that was just vibing out of this doll. When I saw the doll, I went, oh my. Now, this is in a photo. This doll, it was creepy. It had those big, wide, open eyes that just kind of stare straight into your soul. This doll had attachments, like these were energetic attachments. These were negative energetic attachments. I could feel them. And I quickly messaged Lisa. I said, look, please don't put that doll in your newborn's cot. Wait and see if we can fully cleanse it first. And like Lisa was already ahead of me. She was like, nope, that thing It is not going in my biscot. Lisa said that she'd wrapped it up in a blanket and she'd put it in the shed where the neighbour couldn't see. She didn't want to offend the lady. She had given this doll out of the goodness of her heart. But Lisa said it made her feel weird, like headachy and odd in the mind and body. Because when the lady gave it to her, what you do when you get a doll is that you cuddle it. You put it in your arms and you cuddle it. And she said, it just feels wrong. It feels wrong. When I tuned into that doll through the photo, my psychometry intuition was right. It wasn't happy. It was vibing out such an odd, really negative, really yucky vibration. Its energy was really, really messed up. I'm looking at this photo and I'm feeling cold shivers, pains in my legs, confused thinking, and really, I felt really, really uneasy about this doll. Now, normally dolls don't bother me. I don't fall for that haunted doll vibe that you see on the internet and that you see in movies. But a doll is an item. And a doll is an item that it'll be something that people would touch quite often. So of course it's going to absorb emotional imprints. It's just what happens with things that are used often. Now this will probably creep a lot of you out. In my mind, I heard the name Megan. And I don't know a Megan. I don't know where the name came from. It just popped into my head again. So I'm going, okay, this doll wants to be called Megan. I suppose people give dolls names, don't they? Maybe this doll had never had a name. Maybe she wanted to be called Megan. So instead of calling her the doll, I called her Megan. Now, Megan showed me through the energy of the pendulum and looking at the photo, I saw that she'd been in many people's homes and she'd really been disrespected and mistreated by many, many children. They'd pulled on her limbs, they'd thrown her around the room, they'd thrown her in cupboards, she'd been hit up against the furniture. And those actions and the emotional imprints that come with those sort of actions, they just attract entities. They just do. Because remember, these energy beings are attracted to vibration. So even after a full cleansing, once I did all the detective work and found all the emotional imprints, and once I removed the paranormal entities, the doll still didn't feel quite right. I'm wondering whether that was just my mind doing the creepy haunted doll thing that many of us do, because sometimes dolls just look creepy. Especially the older dolls, because they were designed for a particular time period or a particular fashion. They're just not fashionable now, so we think of them as being old and creepy. Well, Lisa decided to keep the doll because she really wanted to honour the neighbour's request. Lisa listened to what her body was saying and she contacted me, so I'm so glad she did. So always listen to your mind and your body's reactions to items. Your senses, whether you believe in psychic abilities or not, your gut instinct will alert you to disturbing energy. If you like the content of this episode today, please think about leaving me a rating and a review. What reviews do is they let other people know your thoughts about my supernatural subject matter. People love reading reviews. And we're spreading the word about the real paranormal world around us. I would really appreciate it. Now let's get back to the episode. Now let's get into my top 5 psychometry tips for awareness, activation and observation. And remember, everyone can do this. Psychometry takes practice and it takes observation and self-awareness. So we're going to be focusing on, in these 5 tips, we're going to be talking about psychometry with objects and photos. But you can apply these techniques to also working with places and pets and people. So let's get into it. Now, number 1, be relaxed in the mind and body with no preconceived expectations of what you're going to sense. Because if you've got it set up in your mind, you want a particular outcome, that's exactly what you're going to get. And it's not going to be accurate for your psychometry reading. So you have to learn to get out of your own way. Now, number 2, I often talk about the blank mind state. So in other words, what you're doing is you're emptying your mind of all worries, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and you're also aware of what your bodily pains and aches are at that time before you start doing your psychometry. Because you don't want to confuse your personal feelings and your personal pains with the information that might be coming through the object or the photo. Now, number 3, time to look at the photo or to touch and handle the object. Now, remember, stay relaxed and observe how you're now thinking and feeling. And don't expect there to be 2 or 3 second energetic exchange. Sometimes the energy takes time to come to you. Quite often these days we want everything instantly. Well, I'm sorry, psychometry doesn't always work that way. So you sit, you relax, you hold on to the object. Remember, no expectations. Sometimes people like to shut their eyes and they just sit with it. And what you're doing when you're sitting with it is that you're looking for an energetic exchange. Now, this can be very subtle or it can be a bit like a slap in the face. I've had both types. It can be quite intense or it can be very, very subtle. It depends. You've just got to be open to how the information comes to you and be aware of the slightest changes in your thoughts, your mannerisms, your reactions, your moods, your bodily sensations. Like I mentioned, such as aches and pains. You might cry all of a sudden. You might get angry. You don't know why. So you may feel sensations in your whole body, or they can be localized, such as tingling, lightness, heaviness, prickliness, buzzing, hot or cold spots, or sort of wafting waves of temperature changes. You can feel tiredness. Hyperactivity is one that I get when I do psychometry. You can also feel pulsing in your body, or changes in the vibration, or sometimes even electrical zaps. I get these quite a lot. And it's not from psychometry. Mine comes from the paranormal entities. They're having a bit of a giggle and they like to give me electric shocks. And some people, I'll mention this is our last thing, some people even get changes in the taste in their mouth. Sometimes their mouth might feel metallic, or they're tasting certain foods, or even their sense of smell might pick up on a certain scent in the environment. Is that you? Or is that the object that you're hanging on to? Observe everything that is different between prior to picking up the object to now holding on to it or observing the photo. Everything is relevant, even the strange, weird little odd things that might come into your mind. Some of the best readings that I've done for people through objects or through photos have been the most random, strange information. And I often say to people, this doesn't mean anything to me, but I'm going to say it exactly as I'm getting it. Because the person that you're reading the object for needs to hear the information that way. So it's really important if you can remember it exactly as you're being told. Number 4, this is an important one. Take written notes or record the information that's coming through as you're doing the reading. Because trust me, you're not going to remember all the important details later, all the weird, odd little things later. Because it's not coming from your brain. It's an external information exchange that's being channeled through you. And I know we often forget the important bits. We often forget to write down what needs to be said. So I initially started taking notes when I was doing psychometry, but I had to take one hand off the item to take notes, and it was messy. So what I used to do was to set the record on my iPad or on my phone, and then I could go back later and relay the information to the client in a written document. Or if someone's sitting with you that you're reading an object for them, you can ask the person, would you like to record this with your phone? Would you like to take some notes? Because quite often people are so either excited or shocked or bamboozled by the information that comes through is that they don't always remember it later. And they want to tell their family and their friends, and they just can't remember it. So really, really important to record the information in some way. Number 5, and this is most important, practice and have fun with it. When you're tense, and like I said earlier, you expect to get information, you're getting in your own way and it's just not going to work. It's not going to be accurate. You'll get upset because it's not working. Relax, and let your psychic senses guide you. Because I used to get what I called a drip feed. It was never a flowing river. I would always get sort of drips of information. Sometimes it'd be 2 or 3 days later and I'm going, oh, I wish I had have said that. I wish I had have written that down. Now, like I said, let your psychic senses guide you. They are an integral part of our energy body. We all have them. You'd be surprised how often you use them in your daily life without even realising it. And when you're practicing psychometry, you might see information in your mind like a movie or flashes of words. You might feel emotions. Like I mentioned earlier, you might feel like you want to cry or you're angry. Now, the bodily sensations that I mentioned earlier, such as aches and pains, you might get strange coughing fits, you might have a tight chest, you might feel leg numbness. This is the way that your body is showing you how the person felt when they were wearing that item. And don't be worried that you'll stay that way, because you won't. It lasts for maybe anywhere from 30 seconds to maybe 5 minutes, and then it dissipates. It's just the way that your body receives the energy. Now, energy is electromagnetic, and our body generates energy all the time, 24/7, with our minds and our thoughts and our actions, and we're constantly receiving information from each other. Now, this can be in person, or it can be from objects, or it can be from photographs, or it can be from places. So have fun practicing your psychometry and developing your own unique psychometry skills. On my YouTube channel, I have a whole playlist full of videos where I talk about body dowsing, which is a form of psychometry. So for those that are interested, I will add a playlist link in the description box and also in the podcast transcript. So in episode 84, we have a question from Amy, who lives in the UK. And Amy asks, do demons have souls? And can they go to heaven? And I have a rather interesting perspective on this topic. And I would say some inside information from the dark entities themselves. And I'll be sharing a couple of experiences that highlight what I've witnessed with dark entity transition into the afterlife. So stay tuned for next week's rather unusual and fascinating episode. So thank you for joining me today. And don't forget, if you want to share a paranormal experience just with myself, or you would like me to share one of your experiences through my podcast, you can do a voice recording, or you can write out your experience and I will read it exactly as you have written. You can email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website, Spiritual Being. You will find the address in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.